You've been searching for the best way to generate passive income in your life and heard that real estate is a great way to do it. But you're tired of all the so-called gurus who are all talk and no substance. Get ready to celebrate because Kevin Buck has spent 14 years successfully making it happen. This is the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Now, here's Kevin Buck.
Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast, where our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. And our guest for this week's show is CPA and growth and profitability strategist, Marcus Krigler. Marcus is a senior associate with the Missouri-based firm Duckett Ladd. After developing relationships with some of the biggest leaders in real estate investing, Marcus began to notice a problematic trend in many real estate portfolios. Accounting and tax issues were being approached reactively instead of proactively. Utilizing his firm's extensive experience in real estate as his platform, Marcus has developed a strategic approach to increasing cash flow and reducing tax liability for his clients, representing over $300 million worth of assets. He and the Duckett Ladd team have a unique partner-focused approach that helps their clients make quicker, more accurate financial decisions so CEOs and other leaders of the organization can spend their time doing what they're most passionate about. Now, I'll tell you, I was actually introduced to Marcus and his team through a very high-level real estate mastermind that I'm a part of. This particular mastermind it's comprised of some of the top real estate investors in the country, many who do in excess of $20 million a year of transactions, many more than that, and a large number who have abandoned their prior tax advisors and CPA firms to jump on board with Marcus and his team. That credibility of loan that a lot of that shift happened to go over to Marcus and his team. That credibility of loan spoke volumes to me and my partners while we were in our search for a new tax advisory firm to work with. And so during our search, one of my partners, Brian Spear, who will also be joining us here in this call, he actually interviewed some of the top tax advisory and fractional CFO firms in the country. And after those interviews, all the signs actually still pointed back to Duckett Ladd. And so in today's show, we're going to be covering two very important topics, guys. The first being the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that was signed into law by President Trump on, I believe, was December 22nd and actually went into effect on January 1st of this year. This new law is something that accountants and tax advisors have been really scrambling to dissect and make sense of it all to better advise their clients on how to take advantage of the benefits that are associated with the changes. And so my goal is to have each and every one of you leave this podcast with a much clearer picture of how you can take advantage of this within your own real estate investing business. And the second topic that we're going to cover today is the actual benefits of hiring a fractional CFO for your business. Marcus has actually joined our team here at Sunrise, acting as our CFO. And I'll personally tell you, and I'm sure Brian will share the same sentiment, that we have been nothing but impressed over the last couple of months of working together with Marcus and his team. And maybe you think your company isn't at the point where you feel you could benefit from a CFO or a fractional CFO, but I would probably beg to differ. Even if you're just a solopreneur and you're rolling on your own right now, just about anyone I feel can benefit from a very experienced and seasoned CFO. And so we're going to be talking about that as well. And so with that, guys, I'm excited to get onto this call with Marcus and also Brian. But before we do, here's a quick word from our show sponsor, Sunrise Capital Investors.
Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here with Sunrise Capital Investors. As you are hopefully already well aware if you've been a listener for any period of time, my goal has always been to provide you with as much value as I possibly can through my two podcasts, Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow and the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. As our audience continues to grow, literally, we've been downloaded millions of times by folks in over 125 countries. I've had thousands of people reach out looking to get involved in our niche. And that's the phenomenal niche of mobile home park investing. For those that don't know, I've been a full-time real estate investor for nearly 20 years now, and I've personally invested in and have owned apartment complexes, various commercial properties, hundreds of single-family rentals, and I've interviewed some of the most successful investors in just about every other asset class, and I've arrived at this one very simple conclusion. Mobile home parks are hands down the best investment I've found to date. Why? They provide investors with the best risk-adjusted returns out of any other real estate sector that I've seen. Investing in real estate can get complicated, and I really want to simplify this process for you. If you're someone who wants to diversify away from the uncertainty of Wall Street and allocate a percentage of your real estate portfolio to mobile home parks, but maybe you don't have the time nor the inclination to personally locate good deals yourself, then our team will do it for you. At Sunrise Capital Investors, our team specializes in the acquisitions and management of undervalued and highly profitable mobile home parks. And we are now providing accredited investors with an opportunity to participate directly alongside our team in our up-and-coming deals. And let me say this, I believe that we are hands down the best in our space at sourcing highly profitable off-market deals. That's really what makes us unique in this niche and as investment managers. As stewards of your capital, we truly are aligned with our investors. We've structured our investment fund so that we as a company are incentivized in the same way the investor is, which is through the performance of the investment itself. In addition, we want to make sure that we not only make money for our investors, but that they understand how it's being made. That's why we provide our accredited partners with a private monthly podcast that walks them through the detailed updates on how their investment is performing. And we're very transparent, providing you with the good, the bad, and the ugly at times. And so if you'd like to learn more about the partnership opportunities with our team here at Sunrise, please go visit sunrisecapitalinvestors.com and click on the investors link to get signed up. It's absolutely free and you'll get placed on the priority list of when new opportunities come along. Also, feel free to call us at 833-CASH-FLOW without the O. Again, that's 833-CASH-FLOW without the O. And one of our investor relations team members will help you schedule an appointment to speak with one of our managing principals. If you have questions, go ahead and schedule a call and let's get on the phone and talk. And with that, guys, I'd like to leave with one last thought. From the time that I wake up in the morning till the time that I lay my head down the rest of the evening, my number one priority with everything I do, whether it be recording this podcast, working for our investors, helping each of you reach your investment goals, to providing a great experience to each of our residents who reside in our communities, is to add huge amounts of value to everyone that I come in contact with. Now, with that being said, I look forward to the opportunity of bringing value to you through Sunrise and through this podcast. Thank you for your time. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the show.
Alrighty, guys. So now I'd like to welcome our guests for today's show, Marcus Krigler and Brian Spear. How you guys doing today?
Doing great. Doing
well, Kev. Doing well, man. I'm happy to be on the podcast here. I will say that you were ribbing me a little bit before about my poor hairline. I'm jealous of how strong yours is, but in any event, man, happy to be on the call.
I'm happy to have you here, Brian. You're like the guy that hides in the shadows of our company. So you're on the show and you've got a lot to offer here. And so I'm excited to have you as part of this conversation today. So what I'd like to do, guys, just to start off, Marcus, I spent just a few minutes giving your background, a little bit about you and your company, but I surely didn't do you justice. So can you take a few minutes and just tell our listeners a little more about yourself personally, as well as your company, Duckett Ladd?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, Kevin, thanks for having me on the show. I've been a listener for a long time. Really enjoy what value you have to offer to your audience. So I feel honored to be here. So first off, I think I'd be remiss not to start with Duckett Ladd. I mean, this is the company that really I grew up with as a professional. I started with these guys, Bill Ladd and Jared Duckett, really right out of college as an intern. And, they've really groomed me to be the accountant I am. And I have a lot of appreciation for them as mentors and leaders to me. Duckett Ladd is actually a relatively new firm, started in 2015. Bill Ladd and Jared Duckett actually broke off, took the leap of faith and broke off of a much larger firm and started this firm here in Springfield, Missouri. We started that. We've got we grew from 12 people at the time to now 20 to 25 staff, depending on the time of year, and really have grown as a firm over the last 3 years. Myself personally, I've worked with a myriad of different types of businesses, but really found my niche in real estate. Our firm works with real estate all over the nation, and it's allowed me the opportunity to see what great real estate investors do and then work with my clients to kind of help them through those same struggles. So, that's a little bit about kind of where I came from and Duckett Ladd as a firm. Okay,
fantastic. Thanks for that, Marcus. And Brian, since you're kind of you're the newcomer to the show, maybe take a minute and introduce yourself a little bit. Not many of our listeners have actually had the chance to hear from you in the past, other than our investors, since you are the director of investor relations here at Sunrise. I know you joined the company a few years back, and now you're also a principal of the firm here. But from your own words, maybe take a few minutes, tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you're all about, man.
All right. I'll try to be brief here. I try to think that I have a lot of good characteristics, right? A strong hairline is not one of them, but in any event, I'll try to be brief. Didn't grow up in a very affluent environment. My folks got divorced when I was relatively young, 10 years old. Mom moved to the south side of Chicago, and that was my first experience in manufactured housing, was living in a mobile home right after that. And my dad moved to Gary, Indiana. Those that are familiar with just MSAs in general will know that Gary's probably not the best corner on the block, as it were. In any event, the question was, how do I get out of this situation? I need money. Well, how do I get money? I need a good job. How do I get a good job? I needed a good degree. I don't have any money to buy a degree, so I had better find a way to earn scholarships to get a degree. So from that young age, I decided to work extremely hard academically and athletically. By the time that I graduated high school, I had scholarship offers all over the country. I had to choose a sport. I wasn't strong enough to play football. I wasn't tall enough to play basketball, but I taught myself how to hit both right-handed and left-handed so that I could get more views from collegiate scouts. In any event, also graduated 5th in my high school class, yada, yada. Had multiple offers and ultimately landed at the University of Kentucky, where by the time that I graduated, I was captain of the squad, had a bunch of big leaguers on the team. So I know that I wasn't the most talented guy. I just worked pretty hard. So shortly after that, took a job in the professional world, making a good living, and started taking those piles of cash that I was earning, and I wanted to turn them into streams of income. And this is where you come into the story. Just like everybody else who sits there and listens to you on a weekly basis, I was the same guy, was looking for a mentor, had listened to you very, very early on. I was an early adopter of podcasting, saw what you were doing and said, look, this guy's a mere 7-8 years older than me, something along those lines. If I could do half of what he's been able to do with him and Joanna and his wife and his family, then I will consider myself successful. So I reached out to you a few years back and said, hey, Kev, I got an offer you can't refuse. I'm going to come work for you for free. I'm going to work 60, 70 hours a week. I'm not going to ask you for a dime. I'm going to bring hundreds of thousands of dollars along with me. I'm going to try to help you grow your business. And after you declined initially, I tried to continue to pester you and just work to earn that trust and respect over time. And that's kind of what started the relationship and how we've built it over time. So been doing it ever since, man. Yeah, no,
and I was a little concerned at first, Brian. I didn't know if you were a stalker, or if you're like I don't know what's happening here. But I will tell you that on a more serious note, like you definitely have probably been one of the, if not the best things that has happened to Sunrise. I mean, you brought a ton of value to the team, and you continually bring value every day. So again, let's not get all fluffy and stuff like that here, but thank you for being a part of the team, man. Like, we wouldn't be where we're at today if it wasn't for you. And with that, I'm going to make Brian come on more shows in the future. So hopefully you'll hear from his voice, and maybe he'll even show his face here. For those that are listening to the audio version, we're doing a video podcast as well. And Brian decided to not show his pretty head that he has that he talked about. So
try not to break the screen, Kev.
Yeah.
Man, I love your guys' relationship there. He pokes you about being 7 or 8 years older. You didn't catch that part. And you give him a hard time about the bald head. So
I think you gain sophistication as you get older, right? So actually, I take it as a compliment.
There you go. I like it.
With that being said, let's, we got two topics we want to cover today. First and foremost, which I think is the most important, right? This is a top priority, Marcus, is the Tax Cuts and Job Act that Trump signed on. I think I got the date right, which I think was December. It was either 20th or 22nd, but actually went into effect beginning of this year. And so what I'd like to do is take initially a high-level approach. I know we have some more granular questions as well that we'd like to ask that I think a lot of our listeners need to know the answers to. But first and foremost, maybe take a few minutes and just tell us what it is, right? What is this Tax Cuts and Job Act? And then also, why should us being real estate investors, why should it matter to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So it did, I think December 22nd is the right date. Most of the law took effect January 1st, 2018. However, pieces of the law, and then that we'll probably talk about a little later, actually took effect. They backdated it to September 27, 2017. So there was actually some pieces of the law that you could have taken advantage of in 2017. When Donald Trump ran, he ran on this purpose of reducing taxes will spur economic development, spur economic transactions, and then ultimately everybody benefits within the country. That was his point. So, shortly thereafter, it didn't take him long. He and his team developed this Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to do just that: reduce the tax rates, reduce the taxes on. Really, they focused on corporations first. And corporations got a great tax cut down 21% from the max of 35%. But they couldn't just do C corporations. They had to make a benefit for all businesses, which, this is where real estate investors come in, because real estate is a business. We look at it as an investment, but really it's a business. So, that's kind of a large overview of it. But probably the biggest thing that people have heard about is this Section 199A deduction, or we call it the QBI deduction, the Qualified Business Income Deduction. So that's where you basically take your net income, and there's some rules associated with it. Obviously, it's not just simple net income, but let's just say you take your net income and you're only going to get taxed on 80% of that income instead of the 100% that maybe you were taxed on in 2017.
That's fantastic. And without going too much into weeds, Marcus, so what are some of the qualifying factors? Is that something we could cover without having to delve too deep?
Yeah, so really the biggest factor for maintaining the qualified business deduction is your income. So if you have taxable income of less than $315,000, you're generally going to get that qualified business deduction. If you are over 315, there's kind of a phase out between 315,000 to 415,000. And, that's kind of a convoluted mess there. But if you're above 415,000, there's restrictions that you have to go through. There's formulas that you have to do in order to qualify for that qualified business income. So if you're under 315, you're probably going to get it. If you're above 415, there's going to be some additional calculations in order to get that qualified business deduction.
Got it. And Brian, I know that you had some other additional questions regarding Section 199A, which Marcus just referred to, a little bit of a granular nature. And so maybe chime in and so we can better understand what it is and how we real estate investors can apply to our own business.
Yeah, just a brief overview here. The headline of the original tax cut was that it was mostly for corporate taxes, as you'd alluded to, but that doesn't really affect the vast majority of the listener base here. We want to focus on how it affects us as real estate investors. And a good percentage of the listeners are real estate professionals who are active investors. They might be syndicators themselves. They might be just actively owning a few mobile home parks or a few apartments or whatever the case may be. But we also have a good percentage of folks that are limited partners, passive investors in syndications, crowdfunding, so on and so forth. It's my understanding that both of these parties, both passive and active, will benefit from Section 199A. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the biggest key is you have to have an active trader business, and that's what they stipulate is in order to qualify as receiving the QBI deduction. And what an active trader business is, they haven't defined. That's kind of some of the stuff they're working through right now that you alluded to at the beginning of the call. But case law says that kind of an active trader business is anything that has recurring transactions to it. So you're consistently doing work, right? So it's not kind of a one-off. You're spending time doing consistent transactions. So most real estate is going to be a trader business in all actuality. So yes, absolutely, you're going to qualify if there's income. And we both know that in a lot of syndications, through depreciation in real estate, there's not always income there. So there's no income, there's no 20% deduction on that income.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And more specifically regarding the type of income that are generated from our types of businesses, real estate in general, historically, capital gains has been a tax-favored portion of the investment, but the ongoing actual income, the net rental income, as it were, that's on the Schedule E, that is actually sheltered through the QBI, correct?
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely correct on that.
I know there's some, Marcus, other components to this Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that can be of value to real estate investors. And we talked about Section 199A. What are some of the other important factors of this tax reform, this tax law that can benefit us?
Yeah, I feel like we're burying the lead a little bit here. Bonus depreciation is most certainly one of the most favorable aspects here. Marcus, feel free to dive in.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is probably the most favorable part of the entire tax code for real estate investors is the new depreciation rules. Let's go back to 2017 so we can just compare a little bit. In 2017, the bonus depreciation rules were 50% bonus depreciation for personal property, for new personal property. So basically, if you had an apartment complex, let's say, and you put in new appliances, you could take a write-off of 50% of those appliances, right, on bonus depreciation. But they had to be new appliances. They had to be brand new, off the factory, off the floor. You couldn't buy a used appliance or anything like that. But now it's different. Now you get 100% bonus depreciation on new and used property. So let's say you buy a apartment complex and you do a cost segregation study, and that cost segregation study says, well, you've got X amount, let's say it's $300,000 worth of personal property in that asset. Well, through the new tax rules, you can expense 100% in year one all of that personal property, which is just amazing for real estate investors because that's going to eat up a lot of income that they could be receiving.
And they can take that all in year one, correct?
All in year one, absolutely. Now, there also are some limitations. As with everything, there's an exception and then there's another exception, right? So that's just how our tax code is. But generally speaking, they can take that all in year one and write that off in year one, as long as they have the income to do so.
Sure.
If they don't have the income to do so, then we fall into our net operating loss rules, which has changed as well.
Okay, let's try to get a little bit more clarity here and use a couple of hypotheticals. So as mentioned, formerly the old law was that when you did a cost segregation study, assuming we went into an apartment complex, you'd have a certain percentage of that property allocated to 5, 7, or 15-year property. It might be 25% rough shot of a particular multifamily investment. I think that's pretty fair. Historically, again, you could not deduct that in year one because it was not considered bonus depreciation. And even if it were, it would only be a 50% stake of that allocable percentage. In the new law, you can do all of the above. That same exact $1 million purchase that might have 25% allocated to 5, 7, and 15-year property, we can now take all of that shorter-lived asset and take it down and depreciate that entirely, that entire $250,000 in this hypothetical, in year one. I mean, that's just an amazing example. And if I were to delve off the road a little bit here, folks, just manufactured housing, if I'm going to just put a plug in for what we do, it's absolutely phenomenal from our perspective as well. Too often, folks don't understand the merit of manufactured housing. Mobile home parks are remarkably tax efficient. I've spoken with many different folks who've reached out who are unaware of the depreciation that we can achieve in the niche because they're conveying that we're simply buying land, so on and so forth. But when we buy a $1 million mobile home park, we're not just buying the land, obviously. Our goal is to sell the home, so we truly try not to own that aspect. So we are trying to operate the parking lot, as it were, but it's not just raw land. I mean, if it were raw land, we wouldn't be paying $1 million. We're paying for the underground infrastructure, the pipes, so on and so forth. We're paying for the curbs, the gutters, the roads, all of that infrastructure. And typically in a mobile home park, Marcus, correct me if I'm wrong here, but historically, we've been able to allocate about 60 to 65%, sometimes a little more than that, of our purchase price towards those shorter-lived assets. I mean, those curbs, sticks, and bricks, as it were, in the infrastructure of mobile home parks are typically capital improvements depreciated over a 15-year horizon. So from the perspective of a multifamily operator, it is beautiful being able to depreciate about 25% of the purchase price in year one. But from our perspective, we're, and these are the conversations that we have been having, recently here, we're going to have the opportunity to write off 65, 70% of the purchase price potentially in year one. That is just a gigantic deduction, and we need to know whether or not we should take it all in year one or how best to handle that so that we can more appropriately provide our limited partners as well as the GP with the best overall tax advantage possible.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to the question, Brian, like, and Marcus, this is geared towards you. What are both the benefits and some of the downsides of taking it all in year one? Like, can you give me an example of when it would be most beneficial to take it all in year one versus not taking it all in year one?
Right. So, a great example of that is, kind of the net operating loss limitations now. The net operating loss limitations, if you have huge losses that carry forward, it used to be you could carry them back 2 years to your previous tax years, get a refund for those 2 years, and then carry it forward for 20 years, which was a really great benefit. And you could take that net operating loss against 100% of your income for 20 years. And at year 20, if you hadn't used it all, you lost it. Well, now they don't allow you to take that carryback for 2 years. So that's off the table, and you can only carry it forward for 80% of your income. So let's say the next year you made $100,000, but you had a net operating loss of $250,000. You're only going to get to use 80% or $80,000 of that net operating loss against your income, and you're still going to have a little bit of taxable income there. So that is actually a negative in some aspects. But so that's maybe why it takes a little bit of planning. You might not want to take a $600,000 loss in year one. So that's number one. The second one is the business loss deduction. And this is one that a lot of people haven't heard about, but for business losses, you can only take in aggregate $250,000 if you're single or $500,000 if you're married in business losses against your other income. So if you have a lot of business losses from, accelerating all this depreciation, well, you're not going to be able to use it all in year one anyways. Well, that carries forward as an NOL. So, and you're not going to be able to use that in the next year for 100% of your income. So it might strategically make more sense to take that depreciation over maybe a 5-year period rather than all in year one, because you can use that depreciation the next year against 100% of your income. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know, Brian, you and Marcus have had many discussions more related to our syndication structure and how our limited partners, how this can benefit them as far as depreciation is concerned. And so maybe speak to that a little bit as far as the choices that a limited partner might have in a syndication, being a passive investor. Does it have to be all across the board? Everyone takes all the 100% of the depreciation that first year, or can each one of those individual partners in a LLC pick and choose how they want to actually take that depreciation?
Yeah. So no, once the general partners decide, how to depreciate the property, that's how it is. And then the losses flow to the limited partners that way. Now, where you do have some decisions you can make. In a cost segregation study, they typically will break out 5, 7, and 15-year property, just like Brian alluded to. You don't have to take 100% depreciation on every single one of those categories. So where some of the strategic planning comes into play is, okay, well, maybe we want to take 100% bonus depreciation on all 15-year property, but the 5-year property, there's not a lot of it. We're going to extend that out over 5 years and take the depreciation that way and elect not to take 100% bonus depreciation on those assets. So that's where you have some decision making as the general partner to decide how that's going to be depreciated. But once it's decided, it flows, based on the operating agreement or the PPM.
Got it. Good.
And I was going to say, to try to add some clarity here for the listeners and give them the most value possible. Historically, it's been, from my perspective, much more advantageous for the limited partners to simply push forward with that full throttle bonus depreciation, accelerated depreciation, cost segregation studies, and write all of that off as soon as humanly possible from the LP side of the table. And that's because, unlike the GP side, they are able to use it fully, 100% in year one, and that which they cannot use if they don't have sufficient income to offset that loss, they have the ability to roll that forward into year two in 100% increments in year 3, so on and so forth, until they do use it fully. So it's very simple from the LP side. From the GP side, there's a little more strategy that goes into that. But ultimately, I'm of the mind, and Kevin, and we've had these conversations as well, it just makes more sense from our perspective. If we take a little hit on the GP side, if we're not able to use every aspect of the depreciation with the NOL, so on and so forth, it still is in the best interest of all parties to just move forward with the most accelerated depreciation possible. And I would venture to guess that for 99% of the listeners out there, that's probably going to be the case for them as well. But obviously, speak with your own CPA and attorney for your own counsel. Just wanted to add further clarity there.
Yeah, let me jump in on that too, Brian, just for a second here. And just to clarify that on your limited partners, they can use those losses if there's losses generated against their passive income, not their active income. So, and that's what you were alluding to, is those losses, they're not going to be able to use them against their active income because those are two different categories, but they definitely can use them against their passive income. And if they can't use them all, then it's actually passive loss carry forwards, which aren't subject to the NOL rules, which you were also talking about. So that's kind of the difference between the GP, which is active income, and the LP, or the limited partners, which are passive income. They actually get a little bit better benefit with those losses, especially the loss carry forwards.
That's fantastic. I mean, it almost sounds too good to be true, Marcus. I mean, what are the, in the long run, what are the chances of something like, this law being repealed during the next administration? I mean, do you foresee that happening sometime in the future, or is this a limited span of time that this opportunity is going to be around?
Right. Well, most of the law actually does have a dedeline on it, and it's I believe 2025, except for the C corporations. C corporations, I believe the rules are indefinite. It's the 21% tax rate, but most of these laws expire in 2025. Now, it'd be tough to predict if another administration comes in and kind of wipes the slate clean and restarts over. It could certainly happen. I would be sure that there will be some changes done to this tax code, because there always is. There always has been.
Sure. Okay. Brian, did you have anything else with the section of 199A?
No, not particularly. I think we did a pretty good job summarizing what those main benefits were, and I think we got into the weeds a little bit. So, I mean, I'm content. Just know that the bonus depreciation that's available for you as an investor, either actively or passively, is absolutely phenomenal here in 2018 and moving forward. I would also say one little tidbit here for those folks that are just now hearing about these new benefits as we're tax planning for future tax years. You should also know, and we kind of just zoomed right through this, that the code that was written into law actually is backdated, such that if you acquired property in the last quarter, roughly, of 2017, and you want to take advantage of this new bonus depreciation, you may have the opportunity to go back to your CPA and do a cost seg and actually write off that new depreciation with an amended tax return. Feel free to clarify here, Marcus.
Yeah, if you haven't filed the tax return already for 2017 on some of these properties, which you may or may not have, the extended deadline has not passed yet, which is September 15th, you do have the opportunity to go in and still, if you can find a cost segregation company to do it, because, as you can imagine, they're pretty busy right now. If you can find somebody to do it, then absolutely there's an opportunity to take some great deductions in 2017 as well. So that's something to look at. As far as an amended return, the amended returns work a little differently. That you actually have a look back on that, but you actually take that in 2018. It's probably a little convoluted for this conversation, but certainly there's some ways of taking advantage of that in 2017 if you have not filed, or if you have filed, there's also some ways to do it, but it's a little bit more complicated than just amending the return.
Okay. Yeah. So Section 199A is by far the most beneficial and the most exciting aspect of this Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, Marcus. Absolutely. And I know there's some other components of it that do offer some benefit to real estate investors. Maybe at a high level point of view, we can kind of run through those, in respectful of time and such. We got a few other things we want to cover here, but let's go ahead and cover those if you would.
Yeah, well, I think The biggest one that I actually wanted to talk about, and unfortunately this is not necessarily a positive aspect, is the interest expense limitation. I wanted to cover this because I know a lot of the people on your podcast that listen to your podcast are actually syndicators, and they do some syndication much like you guys do. And so the interest expense limitation, basically where this comes into play most is that for syndicators, they're actually looked at as, and this isn't a great word, but it's the fact, a tax shelter. And the rule on the interest expense limitation is that a tax shelter is automatically subject to this interest expense limitation. And a tax shelter is defined by having more than 35% of the profits and losses going to limited partners. So unfortunately, in a lot of these syndications, their interest expense is going to be limited to 30% of their income. Or, if there's no income, they're not going to get any interest expense, which we all know in real estate that's a huge expense in our real estate portfolios. There's a way to get around that, and that's to depreciate your assets in a different way. So most of us have probably heard of makers. That's the traditional way of depreciating an asset. Mm-hmm. Well, what they said is you actually need to depreciate that asset using the ADS method of depreciation, which basically extends the life of some of the assets. Like a 27.5-year property, which is typically a building, is now a 30-year property depreciated over 30 years. What that does not affect is bonus depreciation. So your lower lived assets can still take that bonus depreciation. So apartments are going to be a lot more affected by this than maybe a mobile home park like you guys are in.
Got it. Yeah, very interesting. Brian, any comments on that?
No, I mean, this is just high quality, high level stuff.
Yeah,
and we're obviously getting into the weeds a little bit, but that's absolutely phenomenal information for those that are multifamily syndicators. I mean, it's not, this is new code that has just come out. There's new regulations that are literally coming out month by month here as we continue to roll forward. So please be in consistent communication with your fractional CFO, as it were, with your CPA, as it were, so that you can be up to speed on these new regulations in an effort to plan for next year's taxes. If you are failing to plan, then you are planning to fail.
There you go.
So plan it in advance.
Absolutely.
Know what's coming down the pipe. You'll be very well served for doing so.
Sure.
And the reason why I bring that up is because if you guys are working with your investors, your limited partners, and they're expecting depreciation over 27.5 years, and you haven't made those adjustments to your income projections, you don't want to surprise your investors in April. That's not a good look for anybody. So get with your team, get with your advisors, and work out how that's going to best affect you if you're syndicating these properties, because it will. And we want to make sure and plan for that so that your investors can plan for that as well.
Yeah, duly noted. And I think that leads kind of into how to establish these relationships with folks. Clearly, sitting there and trying to read every single line in the code that is given by the IRS on an annual basis, probably not the highest and best use of time as you as a syndicator, right? So you need to bring on team members that are much, much smarter than yourself. And that's why Marcus is here and the entire Duckett Ladd squad. With that, Kev, feel free to dive into the fractional CFO talk.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to lead into it. I mean, and Brian, I know that we're still a very small company. I mean, we're growing, we're bringing on team members, and team is everything, right? Bringing in those that are smarter than you in certain aspects of your business. The CFO aspect was a part that we've never had. I mean, for most businesses our size, it's not feasible. We can't afford to hire a full-time CFO that has a $200,000 a year salary, right? It's not a viable option for us at this point. And which kind of takes us to the fractional CFO service. We had explored it kind of, I guess, very lightly, maybe a year or so ago, and really never dug into it, but didn't realize in the past probably 6 months that we absolutely need an expert on our team. We need someone that's got the financial expertise, that has been around the small business realm for many years, that brings the skill sets to the table that we don't have. That Marcus enjoys reading through tax code. Brian and I, that's not the best use of our time. we want an advisor like Marcus that can go through, not just read through it, but can interpret it, but also advise us and our clients on how to most effectively take advantage of these types of situations, and also give us very clear and concise direction. Be that sounding board, be that third party, unbiased opinion that can give us that financial direction that all growing businesses absolutely need at every point along the way. So with that being said, what I'd like, Marcus, is I know that Duckett Ladd, you guys have many different services that you offer. Your fractional CFO service is one of them. Yes. You've been working with us for a number of months now. And this isn't just the plug Duckett Ladd. That's not what this is all about. But seriously, guys, Brian, you can chime in as well, but it's only been a few months, but Brian, you spent a lot of time researching other fractional CFO firms, and everything led back to Duckett Ladd, and we have not been disappointed at all. I mean, we've been thrilled with the relationship, and it's everything we thought it was going to be and more. And I'll leave it at that. And what I'd like to do, Marcus, is maybe share a little bit of a background on, for those that don't know what a fractional CFO is, right? Maybe they've never even heard of that terminology. Everyone knows what a CFO is for the most part, but what does it mean to offer a fractional CFO service?
Yeah, so that's a great point. I think it's really a new concept. And I say new concept probably within the last 5 years in the accounting industry. I think there was really a breakdown between this accounting relationship, your tax guy, right? And then everything else you need for accounting. And most businesses can't afford, just like you were saying, to go out and get a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 CFO to put in their business. And what we found was you have the skill set right in front of you. You have those financial experts right in front of you. We just got to turn the relationship on how you're using them. Mm-hmm. So that's really how the fractional CFO came up. And how we looked at it was, how do we form this relationship with our clients that can add the most value to them at a rate that is fair for both parties? And that's really what it comes down to. The fractional CFO service that we offer is really, in a lot of ways, kind of a buffet, if you will. You kind of pick and choose what services you need the most in your business, and then we put that together and we use it, and we help you with those services. We obviously have a foundation of stuff we do with every single client, but above and beyond that, then it's kind of okay, you need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this, and that's different for every single person.
Yeah. And Brian, I'd like you, if you could take a minute and speak a little bit to kind of the exact qualities. I mean, you were involved in this interview process. I mean, you spoke with many other fractional CFO firms and accounting firms. And so maybe speak to some of the qualities, more particularly that we were looking for here at Sunrise, and, what you found with others, but also why we really were led back to Duckett Ladd.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every business is going to be different, right? Our business is a little different, period, than some of the folks that are just getting started in syndication. And we're also slightly different than some of the folks that are out there doing $200 million funds, because we just choose to be a more boutique firm where we're raising, $10 million here, $10 million there for the funds that we're rolling out. So with that said, from our side of the table, as mentioned already, we didn't have the capacity to bring on somebody with that gigantic ongoing annual salary, but we still wanted a personal relationship. So when sifting through all the different options that were available to us, we have those really phenomenal, well-known, deeply rooted CPA firms and fractional CFOs that have been established and around for 80 years, so on and so forth. That's phenomenal. But oftentimes they're a little more bureaucratic, a little larger, and their systems and processes are ironclad, but there's less personal touch associated with that. The Duckett and Ladd experience has been a little different in that it's much more relational. And that was something that we really prized in our search when speaking with all the firms that we had interviewed. And that's the feedback that we'd received from members of the collective genius as well, right? I mean, we're talking about some of the folks that are doing exceptionally well in many facets of real estate. To a large degree, if the vast majority of those folks had vetted CPA firms all over the country and they've conveyed that, these guys are pretty bang up solid crew, well, then we're obviously going to take that into account. And that's really been the experience that we've had with Marcus as our point person over at Duckett Ladd and the rest of the team as well. So it's been phenomenal. I would say that when you're vetting potential CPA firms and fractional CFO services in your own business as you're looking to scale, you're going to need to set aside what you're looking for, obviously list that out, what you're trying to achieve with the relationship, and then obviously have a list of questions that you're going to pepper the CPA firm with when you get on the phone. And I'll just roll through some of the things that we had asked in our search. Specific stuff, right? Just very big high level stuff. How are your fees structured? Different firms will work differently. Is it a flat fee on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis? Is it an ongoing, hourly fee, so on and so forth? Who will be the point person over at that respective CPA firm? Is it going to be one individual, or are you going to be working with the team? Is it going to be more the partner? Is it going to be more the bookkeepers that are at the firm? Who am I going to be working with on an ongoing basis? How conservative or aggressive might you be as a tax planner? Oftentimes you'll hear just the very vague general feedback that they'll do whatever the client seeks, but you want to get a vibe of how they would prefer to operate, and it needs to be in alignment with how you intend to operate moving forward. This is some very basic stuff. Do they have the ability and the capacity to send secure files on an ongoing basis? If they don't have that, they're probably not the right folks for us. How proactive is that relationship going to be? How proactive are they going to be in tax planning for the following year, or are they more reactive in nature? You'll speak to a lot of folks, and you're going to need to find the right fit, but we would much prefer to be on the former, working well in advance, as alluded to previously. If you are failing to plan, then you're obviously planning to fail.
Yeah. Hey, it's very fitting. And I'll tell you that was one of the reasons that we went looking for another CPA firm. You're talking about being proactive with tax planning. And we weren't overly satisfied with our prior relationship in terms of just being proactive in nature. It felt like we were the ones educating our CPA, and it should have been the other way around, right? And so I think we've really found that with Marcus and his team, and have been very happy. Again, it's only been a few months, but we've been very happy, and I really see the relationship going on for a very long time. Obviously, there would be some point in time where it probably does make sense for us to actually bring someone in house and actually hire a full time CFO. We're not at that size. Hopefully, we'll be there in the next 2 to 4 years. But at this point, Marcus and his team, it's a perfect fit for our business. And that kind of takes me to the next question I have, Marcus. When really is, I kind of have my own opinion, but from what you've seen, when is the right time for a small business or even a solopreneur to seek out the expertise or the guidance of a fractional CFO?
Right. Well, that's a great question. Obviously, you have to have had some success because, just like hiring a regular CFO, there's an expense associated with it. And anytime you pay somebody really for consulting work, you're paying a premium, and that's the truth of it. So you have to have had some success. You're probably not a startup. You're probably somebody that has made a little bit of money in the past and really looking to go to another level. That's really when you want to look for that CFO, is to kind of take you to that next level. And that may be that the person is taking things off your plate that you're not uniquely qualified to do to free you up to take you to the next level, or that they know something, they have the experience and can give you guidance to help you get to that next level. And in actuality, it's probably both.
Both. I was going to say that's both. It's all the above, right? You got to understand what your unique skill set is, right? And if your unique skill set is not from a tax advisory or CFO standpoint, financial standpoint, then you're probably not doing yourself or your business a benefit by not outsourcing this sooner and actually bringing on an individual like Marcus or someone similar that can bring that expertise to the table. Obviously, Brian's an incredibly smart individual. I find myself to be sometimes a smart individual. Our other partner, very smart individual, Charles Dehart, and then our entire team here are just brilliant folks, but no one that brought the level of experience that Marcus did to our firm. And so it made the most sense, and it's going to allow us to get our business to that next level by bringing him on that team. And so with that, Marcus, are there any other questions? I know Brian kind of went through his general questions that he was asking as he was interviewing different CPA and fractional CFO firms, but are there any other key questions that the listeners need to be asking when they're out there on the hunt?
Right. Yeah. So I think the biggest thing I think you need to, and it's not really a question to the CPA or the fractional CFO, it's the question to yourself. And it's, can I see myself working with this person on a regular basis? Brian knows we're on the phone every week doing something. We're just talking because, there's things we're trying to get kicked off. We got a fund going. We got big things going on right now that we need to keep in touch. And if this is not somebody that you feel like you can have that relationship with, then right off the bat, no matter what their skill set is, that's not going to work. You're not going to enjoy being around them. So that's number one. It's that relationship. Can you develop that relationship with that person? And then number two, is that person willing to get fired? And that's kind of a weird thought process, right? But are they willing to say the things that maybe you don't like that might get them fired? And really the things that you don't want to hear as a business owner, that's probably going to make you mad, that you're not going to like, that may be the best thing you need to hear. And if you just have a yes person that, oh yeah, that sounds great, that sounds great, that sounds great, that's not making you better. You got to have somebody that's willing to say, no, that's a bad idea and here's why. And be able to support that decision and support their theory on that.
Agreed. Yeah. To those 2 points, I'll speak to the latter first. Regarding if you do your job well, you'll ultimately be fired. That's unfortunate, but I mean, if you're kicking butt and taking names, right? I would also say this. You discussed, kind of consulting fees. From our perspective, bringing on a fractional CFO, assuming that they're credible, quality, and do a great job for you and your business, it's very likely that the incremental cost associated with bringing that guy on board will pay for itself. And they should help you grow and become more profitable. And ultimately, it will pay for itself over time. This has been our experience. Further, if they continue to do that and it continues to grow and it continues to be bigger and better, so on and so forth, to his point about being fired, it's likely at some point that we may have to hand off that fractional CFO position to a more firmly, deeply embedded full-time CFO in office next to me in a cubicle. That may be a conversation that we have at some point down the line. I mean, that's what Marcus is pointing out here as he says, I might have to get fired at some point. That has to be an open conversation amongst all parties. And then also, to his former point, to the first point that he brought up regarding the relationship, which is absolutely paramount through this entire process, how do you peel that information back? How do you peel that information from the CPA firm or fractional CFO service, as it were, when you're underwriting these folks to determine whether or not they're the right fit? And the question that I asked, and the question that you should pose as well, is what is expected of me as a client? How do you view me in your firm, from your side of the table? That is extremely important, because this is not a one-sided relationship where we are needing and demanding something from that side of the table. Too oftentimes, folks view the relationship in that regard. You have to view it from Marcus's side of the table, from Duckett's side of the table. What do you expect of me? How often do you need me to reach out to you? Talking about being timely, so on and so forth, all those sorts of things. Just as long as you guys can get on the same page with those items, then you may find the right fit. But that's, I feel, a good leading indicator on how you can peel back that information from the folks you're interviewing.
That's a great point, Brian. I think to your first point, and I think we talked about this when you guys interviewed us, it was, guys, if you fire us, and I wouldn't call it a firing at that point, right? But if we graduate you up to a full-time CFO, we won.
You've done your job.
We've done our job, and we're so satisfied with that. We have an abundance mentality as a company that if you guys move on, guess what? And you guys have grown so much because we've been able to help guide you to that level. You're going to tell the world, and there's going to be more people that we can help and fulfill that. So we don't look at it as a bad thing. We think it's a great thing. If we can graduate you up to that CFO, help you hire that right person, help you get them in the right seat, get them started, and then be able to back away and just become maybe more of a tax advisor or something like that, that is a win for everybody involved. And that's what we want to do. That's our goal.
Yeah, no, all great points, guys, both of you. And with that, I mean, bottom line, those that are tuning into the podcast is if you've been thinking about this, if you've considered it, if you think that you might be at the point in time where you really need to seek the guidance of a experienced CFO or financial expert like Marcus, if you're on that hunt, definitely, you got to reach out to Duckett Ladd. At least give them a call. Add them to your list of folks that you're going to spend some time with on the phone to interview and see if they might be a good fit and what kind of value they might be able to bring to your company. I think you'll be very surprised. With that, guys, we're kind of running out of time here. So I want to talk, Marcus, very quickly about, you have a free gift that you want to offer the listeners. And you put together a white paper, or a free report, whatever you want to call it. But you spent a lot of time with you and your team really dissecting this new tax reform. And you put together a free offer for the listeners here for tuning into the show. And so why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners how they can get that free report on this Tax Cuts and Job Act, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity of the forum to talk about this. Yeah, right now our firm is putting together a white paper that really focuses on the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act specifically for real estate investors. So we talked a little bit. We took a high overview. We got in the weeds just a little bit, but not a ton. If you want more information about maybe specifics on how it may affect you, we're putting a white paper together. Probably by the time this airs, it won't be done. But you can go out to duckettladd.com/contact, and it'll ask your name and email address. And when that gets complete, when we put the bow on that document, we'll send that out to you, and you can kind of review it with your CPA and see how those tools, those strategies can affect your tax position.
Got it. Share that one more time. So is it just on your main website, Marcus? Just
Duckett Ladd.com? Well, it's duckettladd.com/contact, and that'll get you to just a fillable form that you can fill out and get that information as soon as it does come available.
Got it. That sounds great. Well, Marcus, now we're going to enter into what I like to call the golden nugget segment of the show. And this is where we're going to kind of wrap things up for the day. And if you had just one final golden nugget of advice or wisdom that you could leave with our listeners that may inspire and motivate them as they progress in their real estate investing career, what would that one last final golden nugget be?
Yeah, I think, being a listener, I knew this was coming, and I got the opportunity to kind of cheat and think about it a little bit. And, I think it comes back to one word, and it's team. Where I see the best real estate investors, the ones that are absolutely out there crushing it, they have a great team. Yeah. They have a great internal team, and then they have a great team of advisors that will help them through this industry. And that's really what I implore you to do, is build that team. If you're not big enough to build a team internally, start reaching out to those attorneys, those bankers, those accountants. Start building that external team so that when you're ready to go, you can have that team behind you and really rock and roll and get off on a good foot.
I love every bit of it. With that, Marcus, it's been an absolute pleasure. Brian, same pleasure goes to you as well, man. I'm so glad that you joined us here. Both of you guys joined us on the call today. It's been a lot of fun, and great last golden nugget. But in all honesty, and I think Brian will agree with me that Marcus, you shared so much incredible information today, tons of other golden nuggets along the way that I hope the listeners can gain a lot of value from in their business. And with that being said, folks, if you have an interest in learning more about Marcus and his team there at Duckett Ladd, you can go visit them on their website. It's duckettladd.com, and it's DucketLadd, duckettladd.com. And guys, that's all we have. So thank you so much for coming and joining us, and you have a wonderful week, my friends.
Congratulations! Now you've got more of the best tricks of the trade in building massive amounts of passive income from real estate. For more amazing resources, visit realestateinvestingforcashflow.com, and we'll see you next Monday morning.